Buonasera, or whatever they say in this part of the world. We're here in glorious sunshine in Italy by Lake Como for the launch of this new car, the Fiat Seicento. He lied. In fact, we don't need to be in Italy for great weather and great scenery and great lakes, because we've got Henley-on-Thames. Not exactly a lake, I think you'll agree, but here we are just on the outskirts of London on a glorious, glorious early summer's day. In fact, before we go onto the car, can we just look upwards, Simon? Can we just take a look at the sky for a moment? The reason I say that is because that all we've been hearing on the car radio today is how the southeast of England is covered in this cloud of pollution, about how the motor car is ruining the planet. Well, I tell you what, I don't see much pollution around, do you? And come to think of it, I'm breathing fresh, clean air. I'm not breathing the pollution that we keep hearing about through the media. I don't know what everybody's going on about. Somebody show me where this big cloud of pollution is over London and the southeast. I'd like to see it one day. Maybe we'll film it. The problem's not half as bad as you might think, and it's certainly not bad when we've got a highly fuel efficient, state-of-the-art engine as we've got in this car here, the Fiat Seicento. You'll remember the Cinquecento, its predecessor. Well, this is the latest one. It only lasted 5 years, the Cinquecento. It's good to see Fiat replacing their models as quickly as that, because too often, I think you'll agree, cars languish, they're around for too long, they're in desperate need of a replacement. 5 years after the birth of the Cinquecento, we've got the Seicento. I wish they'd make those names a bit easier, but nevertheless. What can I tell you about this car? Well, I think you've only got to look at it for the entire story. I mean, it looks funky, it looks fresh, it looks highly desirable. This is one of these micro cars that's going to become more and more popular in future, with all the restrictions on space and all the propaganda war going on against large cars. There are going to be lots of incentives to buy cars like this in future, and really I can't think of a better micro car at this stage. I've driven some of the Korean and Japanese micro cars of the last few years, and certainly in terms of appearance this one must rate as one of the best. It's built in Poland, not Italy. It's built in a plant called the Tichy plant. So you've got a Tichy car built in the Tichy plant. It's not designed for people like me. It's not aimed at people like me. I'm far too old. It's aimed at a much younger audience. It's aimed at the sort of people who might be, embarking on a driving career for the first time. The sort of people who might have just passed their driving test, 18th birthday, 21st birthday. Can you honestly think of a better present for a 21-year-old than this on their 21st birthday? Great, funky car with real street cred. I mean, can you think of a better car for a young kid to get for his 21st birthday? I say his, could well be a her, because Fiat are really aiming this car at young women, not only single ladies perhaps reaching their 18th, 21st birthday, young career women, but also got to be careful what we say here, because we don't want to upset anyone, but they are aiming this car to a large extent at housewives, people whose husbands are out all day long, perhaps in the company car or their own purchased family car. They need something to potter around in. Again, can you think of anything more suitable for that sort of role? But I think getting back to the youngsters who are going to be driving this car, the great thing about it, it's not just a well-engineered car that looks the part, it's a fashion accessory. So often these days people are interested in what their car says about them, the statement it makes. I think this one makes the perfect statement on behalf of youngsters and even old fogies like me. This car, take it from me, is as cute and as perfectly formed as Naomi Campbell's bottom. Can we say that on telly? Well, being the international freeloader that I am, of course, I've driven this car before in Italy. Didn't happen to have a cameraman with me at the time. Would have made life a lot simpler if I had, but the version I drove out there was the 800 or was it 900cc version. It's neither here nor there. What I remember most about it, it had, wait for it, a whopping 39 horsepower. Yes, 39 horsepower. There are cars on the market today with 400, 500 horsepower. The base Fiat Seicento has 39 horsepower. I'm delighted to say that we're now in the top of the range sporting version, and guess what? We're kicking out a massive 54 bhp. Yes, 54 horsepower. it's conceivable that even a fairly average kind of family car might be pumping out 3 times more power than that. So 54 bhp ain't a lot of grunt, I'm sure you'll agree. However, it's all relative, because this is such a small package. We're talking here about an upholstered skateboard, basically. A very nicely upholstered skateboard. An upholstered skateboard I'd like to live with. But because it's so small, because it's so light, because it's got such skinny tyres, it really does feel like a car with an awful lot more power than the spec sheet suggests. Try saying that. Spec sheet suggests. It's a mere 54 horsepower, and yet as you go around that bend, you really can't get that sensation of speed. As you go around that bend, it feels more like a sort of 100 horsepower car. You will not be left wanting in terms of performance in this car. I kid you not. I'm at about 3rd throttle here in 4th gear, and this thing really wants to go. I'm literally, I hate that word, I'm honestly having to go easy on the power because it just wants to take off. It's fast, it's furious, it's funky, and it might look like a little city car that can do nothing more than potter around one-way systems, but believe me, this is a goer. On the odd occasion I've been in high performance race cars, single seaters, touring cars, you name it. I'm not saying I've driven them very well, but I have actually sat at the wheel of them and piloted them around some racetracks around the world. I've even driven one of the Le Mans winning cars. And the feeling you get when you climb into a car like that is that it's built for the driver. You know, it doesn't, forget all this nonsense about, oh, it's all wraps around you and, you know, you feel cocooned in this kind of driving environment. That's not important. It doesn't matter what shape the dashboard is. It doesn't, the only thing that matters is the seating position. And you just feel with this car, they really worked out the seating position to suit somebody who wants to attack the steering wheel, somebody who, when in the mood, can start throwing this thing around. I'm sitting here perfectly comfortable. I'm about 6'6", all right, 5'10", and I sometimes struggle, even somebody of my height, with some cars that I'm in, but this is just great. Tons of well, not tons of headroom, but enough headroom, plenty. I haven't got this seat as far back as it will go back even further than this. My arms are in that perfect position for, you know, slightly bent, in that perfect position for taking these lovely country roads we're on. Pedals are just fine, the offset is perfect. What am I doing looking at the ground? I should be looking at the road. If I've got one criticism, I could do with a bit more under thigh support. I think it's the age, it's creeping up on me. I'm sometimes left wanting the base of the seat to be a little bit thicker to give my leg a bit more support. But apart from that, honestly, it's a brilliant, absolutely brilliant driving position. If you're in the back, well, don't go in the back, basically, unless you're Jimmy Clitheroe or Lester Piggott or somebody like that, because this is not a 4-seater for adults. This is a 2+2, or if you like, a 4-seater for 2 adults and 2 kids, or 2 adults and 2 midgets. On the other hand, I take the view that anybody sitting in the back is a non-fare paying passenger, and if they don't like it, I'll drop them off at the next bus stop. So I'm not too worried, quite frankly, about if anybody's uncomfortable in the back. Having said that, you wouldn't want to buy this car with a view to taking out 4 adults. In fact, you couldn't buy this car and take out 4 adults because it's simply not equipped for that job. 2 adults and 2 kids, just about. Well, I've got to say also, the Poles who built this car have seemingly done a very good job, because it feels as well put together as any Japanese, German, Italian, French car. I mean, as good as anything in this league. So don't go running away with the idea that just because something is from Japan, it's built much, much better. Of course, the Japanese are masters of the micro car these days. They seem to be producing more than anyone else. The Koreans are coming in to some degree. The Italians, of course, have always had this as their territory. When I were a lad, well, in fact, before I were a lad, in, I think, the spring of 1957, when I was being conceived. Honest, the Fiat 500 was being conceived at the same time, and this, if you like, is the spiritual successor to the original. Well, it's the actual successor to the original Fiat 500 600. It's moved on 40 years, and it's 40 years of, well, incredible improvements. And I think just as important as that is the fact that they've kept somehow that cute 500/600 styling from the 50s and 60s, and they've transferred that to the 90s. Great car. What can I tell you? What I can tell you is that this, the Seicento 1100 with the R-Bath sporting pack, is a hell of a little car. I've got a mate, you know, who's got a Porsche 911, and he often goes out for what he describes as 20 quid's worth of fun. He puts some petrol in the tank and just has a blast in it. It's the sort of car you can do that in a very different kind of way. We're not pretending for a minute that it's got anything like Porsche 911 performance. In fact, the top speed of this thing is a mere sort of 93 miles an hour. There's not many cars on the road that will do less than 100 miles an hour. This is one of them. But this car is not about top speed. This is a car that you should throw around country lanes in a responsible kind of way. Would you get out of the way, Mr. Duck? It's a sort of car that you really can have an awful lot of fun with, and forget about 20 quid for an hour or two whacking around country lanes. We've been driving this all day long, and we've probably used a fiver's worth of petrol. This is a car that does 58 mpg, up to 58 mpg. Interestingly, the 1100 version only does about 53 miles per gallon. So it proves the point that you don't necessarily get a better fuel consumption with a smaller engine. I'm very impressed. And like I said at the start, I can't think of a better car for a youngster. In terms of size, it's deceiving because it, from some angles, actually looks quite big. I think whatever angle you look at it from, it's very, very pretty. But, you know, from the rear, and from certain angles, it looks like quite a big car. In fact, it's smaller. Wait for it, I've checked the figures. It's smaller than a Seat Arosa. It's bigger than a Mini. Imagine something between the two. Unlike the Mini, though, of course, this is a car that's a reality. The new Mini is coming in the year 2000. The old Mini, the long-standing Mini we've come to love over the last 3 decades or so, is practically dead in the water. This, to me, is the spiritual successor not only to the Fiat 500, which was born in 1957, but it's also the spiritual successor, if you like, to the Mini Cooper. And I'm not sure when the new Mini comes in the year 2000, whether it will be affordable, quite frankly. Well, to sum up then, Fiat Seicento, built in Poland. If you're worried about the Polish connection, don't be. Fiat have had links with Poland, have been building cars in Poland with 1 or 2 interruptions for the last 76 years. I'm sure you'll know what the interruptions are. But it is a all-singing, all-dancing plant that's building cars to Fiat standards and not to Polish standards. And so I wouldn't worry too much about the quality of this car. Of course, you're not getting a BMW or a Mercedes, but you're not paying BMW or Mercedes prices. Far from it. There's one of these cars rolling off the production line in Poland as we speak every 90 seconds. And it's not like they're not used to building cars for Fiat. Like I said, production goes back for the best part of a century. In fact, for 3/4 of a century. And before they were building the Seicento, they were building things like the Cinquecento and the 126 before that. So the Poles know all about building cars, and they build pretty damn good cars as well, if this is anything to go by.